Hello everybody, here we are today continuing on with our CFL season previews, and we're going to be talking about the Hamilton Tiger Cats today. So before we start with it, please make sure to subscribe if you're new to me or the CFL, whatever the case may be. That being said, let's get on into it. So last season was again another year where the Hamilton Tiger Cats were able to make the playoffs. However, they ended up going 8-10 and once again fell in the first game of the playoffs in the East semifinal. So they are looking for answers, and there's a lot of change for this team for this year compared to last year. Always going to be the case with every team, but they certainly have a lot of things that they want to figure out. So with that being said, what are some storylines for this team entering this season? So the first talking point is whether or not a new head coach will fix things. So the Orlando Steinauer era is over, as he is now not the head coach anymore. He's in a different role, but you are seeing Scott Milanovic end up going out and being the head coach for this team. And this is kind of interesting because we talked about in the season review for Hamilton, when he took over for Tommy Condell, the offense wasn't necessarily doing super well. But after that all changed, like around their 8th or 9th game mark, they ended up seeing a lot of better results. They actually ended up going 5-5 their final 10 games of the year, and then they had 7 games where they scored 27 points or more in that run. So at the very least, you're seeing a Hamilton team that, if things stick how they were last year, they would be a 9-9 side that would be more fun to watch than they were at the start of the year. Because let's face it, the very beginning of the year compared to what the expectations were for Hamilton were really not fun at all, as they started out the year 0-3. They had a tough loss to Winnipeg, they had a tough loss to Montreal. I can't remember who the other team was that they lost to at the start of the year, but that was not exactly a fun time to be a fan, whereas the second half was a little bit better as they were able to, put themselves in that playoff position. Now, Hugh C. Milanovic here, he has got head coaching experience before with the Toronto Argonauts, and that was for 2012 like 2015, 2016. One thing that sticks out in that time was that he had a Grey Cup with the team back in 2012. Now, was he particularly dominant with the team? Were they able to go on and be a juggernaut? Not really, but they did have 2 playoff appearances in that time. Actually, it might have been more, but they had 2 winning seasons in that time, with his best record being 11-7. So are we going to see Hamilton suddenly turn into a juggernaut and win the Grey Cup? Maybe not, but we are seeing something where you get head coach that's won a Grey Cup, which is big because Hamilton's Grey Cup drought is running into like that Winnipeg timeline of nearly 30 years. I know there's a little bit of time left, but this team looks completely different than what we saw from like the 2019 team. The roster looks a lot different from even the 2021 team, and they don't really feel super close to being a Grey Cup contender at the moment. So having a coach that has won a championship and then was part of the second half turnaround for Hamilton kind of feels like things could be changed. Now, will things continue to stay how they were, like they were the final 10 games of the year? I can't say, but it looks like with this hire or, bringing him in and having him be the official head coach and whatnot, things could be better and more exciting, and hopefully for Hamilton fans, the year will start off to where maybe they're 3-0 instead of 0-3. Then the second talking point is, will we see one thing or the other? And this is in regards to their quarterback play. So last year, the Hamilton Tiger Cats kind of finished average in a lot of stats. It's very weird where they'd be like 5th in almost every stat. Maybe not every stat, but a lot of stats. And one thing that really would have helped this team out was better quarterback play. They had Bo Levi Mitchell be their starting QB at the beginning of the year, and this was coming off of him being with Calgary and seeing multiple championships and having some really, really good seasons. Things have cooled off for him in recent years, and he missed time with injuries this season, 2023 I should say, and had some very inconsistent play, as in 6 games I believe that he played on the year, he had 6 touchdowns and 10 interceptions. His biggest game was against the Ottawa Redblacks, where he threw for over 353 yards, or he had 353 yards, 2 passing touchdowns, but 5 interceptions on the day. That was the only game last season where he ended up throwing for over 200 yards. That's kind of a big concern, and I'm kind of in the camp where I hate to say this, but I do think this is true at the moment, that Bo Levi Mitchell's best playing days may be over, and it's more about just getting to being better than he was last year. He's not going to go out there and win MLP. I think we can all admit that right now. But if he can be a steadying presence for this team, where they did finish average in some regards, they could possibly be a better side and take a step forward back to being a winning team, and that would be huge for them. Now, on the flip side, you have Taylor Powell, who was a rookie last year, had a relatively good season. Some games, again, weren't perfect, but other games he ended up seeing good results. I know some of the higher passing yard games came when he threw for like over 40 times, but you have the ability here to see him grow. He ended up signing an extension, and I think he signed with him through the 2025 season, and is somebody that could again, maybe be the short-term quarterback for the future, or maybe even turn to the midterm or long-term QB. He's only 25 years old, so there is room to grow. Tim White can make life easier for either one of these quarterbacks, and then you will see some interesting, bits from this receiving corps. They did release Terry Godwin, but they did bring in Stephen Dunbar Jr. recently, as he was was a free agent after playing 2023 with the Edmonton Elks. So there's going to be a lot of talk about who's going to fill in for the receiving corps. That's valid. But I think at the end of the day, you need just one thing to go right. You either need Bo to be able to be steady, or you need Taylor to be able to take another step in his career, in his development. You don't necessarily need both of them to be stars, but if they are having a year where you're seeing Powell struggle a little bit as he is in the sophomore slump potentially, or you are seeing Bo go out there and again have another bad year where he has more interceptions than passing touchdowns, you could be in for a world of hurt. So this decision right here for who they start, especially if they pull the plug on one quarterback early in the year, could have huge ramifications for whether or not they have a winning season, go to the playoffs, things of that nature. So the third and final storyline here is whether or not Hamilton's defense is flying under the radar. So last season they kind of finished again like this is the team did, where they were like average in a lot of categories, but they had the third fewest sacks in the league. They looked to remedy that as they brought in guys like Brendan Barlow, Dwayne Hendricks, and then David Menard that they signed recently. They could help out here. Barlow ended up leading the three guys in terms of sacks last season with 9, and they were able to poach him and Hendricks away from the Toronto Argonauts, so they had addition by subtraction, as Toronto looks set to be a team that regresses a bit from that 16-2 record, and Hamilton could benefit from that as they did in free agency, as they try to put more pressure on the quarterback. It's going to be huge because if they are able to do that, the defensive line looks like it could be very exciting to watch in the early stages of the year. And if they are able to get towards quarterback more, that could help them in terms of getting more 2-and-outs and things of that nature. And they ended up going out and getting Jamal Peters, which is a fun signing, as well as he adds something to the secondary. A player that's been able to go out there and force a lot of turnovers in recent years. And boy, does it feel really good to not have him going out there and picking you off, because he was the Ticat killer for a bit there, getting a lot of interceptions against Hamilton the year that he had 6 INTs, and could help the secondary in terms of getting interceptions and things of that nature. And then finally, one thing that does stick out is the fact that you had Jameer Thurman end up going and signing with the Saskatchewan Roughriders in free agency, and then you had Simone Lawrence retire. That is big because the two leaders for tackles on your team, that being Lawrence and of course Thurman, are now gone. Now Thurman could very well hurt you down the run, as he plays in Saskatchewan and could play you there. And then Lawrence being gone as well is just a loss of leadership. I know a lot of people weren't a huge fan of him outside of the Hamilton community, but he did a lot of work for the community, played a long time there, was able to play in a lot of championship games that they were never able to come out on top of. But they have a lot of players from that group that were able to be there and will be remembered fondly, even though they didn't win that championship. But linebackers are especially important in our league, again, when it comes to run blocking, when it comes to pass coverage, all those things, not run blocking, but getting after the ball. And then, of course, like I said, being able to help out in coverage. These are all important things that you have to watch out for, and you have two guys that are now gone. The defense could go one of two ways, where maybe some of these players don't thrive as they're not on as stacked of a team as they were maybe in Toronto, or maybe it was a career year, or maybe the linebackers aren't able to provide. Maybe Jamal Peters doesn't end up helping out as much as you thought he would. They could be bad, they could be good. I'm kind of going in the more positive route, thinking all of these additions could lead to the defensive side being better, but we will be watching out for the linebacking group, as if they struggle, the team could struggle, and I'm hoping at the very least they can be at worst, league average again, as this Hamilton side could be better. So overall, what are my thoughts on the Hamilton Tiger Cats? Hamilton, I think, is in a spot where they should make the playoffs again this year, as long as there's not a crazy injury or really poor play. First 3 weeks of the year will define their season, as they play Calgary and then Saskatchewan twice. Going to be some big matchups there, and I think that'll give us a better indication about where they stand. I know I've said that with some teams, but that's been more of like, the first 9 games of the year will really show us, because they've got an easy slate. But the first 3 games of the year are going to be big, because Ottawa should be improved. We say that every year, it feels like. But they are going to be competing again out east, as it could be crazy. Are we going to see Hamilton be a cellar dweller like I thought they would be at the start of the year, where before I did all my notes and all that, I'm like, when I went through their schedule, it feels like it's going to be tough. They could be, again, at the bottom of this, or they're going to be division winners, which is what I don't necessarily feel like will happen. But after doing notes and looking at a lot of the additions and subtractions and how the team performed during the last 10 games of last year, I feel like they kind of could be one or two ways. Maybe they fall in the middle again, which isn't really a bad thing, because if they are 9-9 and make the playoffs, not a concern, because if they get there, then the fans can say, well, we've got a chance to win a championship. And for every team in the league, nobody compares to Hamilton in terms of wanting to win a cup right now, as they want to be the first team, or the highest team, I guess you could say, that jumps into the century in terms of winning a championship. Will they do that this year? I'm going to say no, but I do see the road for Hamilton to be better than last year, as in recent years they've not been able to be anywhere close to the 2019 team. They won't be this year, but maybe, again, 10-8, at least maybe they could post a winning record. We will see though. What are your thoughts on them, as they have the ability to have a good offense theoretically, with James Butler maybe popping off for them? Do you think the defense will be good? Do you think special teams will be good? Let me know your thoughts on all that down below in the comments. Also, please make sure to like this video if you enjoyed it. Subscribe if you're new. Everybody stay safe and have a great night.